joining us, as mentioned, on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. He is our Sixers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, the host of the Coming In for a Landing podcast, which a new edition just dropped today. He is the one and only Paul Hudrick here on 97.3 ESPN. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. And you know what? The reason why I'm doing good is because unlike the hysteria by some people on social media and the misinterpretations of information by some people who work in our industry, the media, I actually feel okay about the Joel Embiid news because, to me, doubtful means that if push came to shove and it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals, he's probably playing. Oh, and by the way, we've already seen a picture of him in a knee sleeve. And as someone who has ripped up both my knees, I can tell you that having a knee sleeve is very different than a knee brace.
Right. And it's just, I've been surprised too. I just sent out a tweet and it's like, there is a chance that he could play tomorrow. How is that not a positive? When, of course, when you see Joel Embiid go down, you see him go to the locker room, you hear that he's not going to play the rest of the game, you can't help but your mind go to the worst possible place, and that is he's done for the rest of the postseason. That's, of course, where your brain, like, how could it not? With the history and everything he's gone through, right. How could you not kind of go there first? So the fact that he was able to play through the injury, like he suffered the injury with 4.5 minutes left in the first quarter, then played for 4 minutes, then walked to the locker room under his own power. And now we're hearing, he had an MRI today and they're listing the injury officially as knee soreness. And there is a chance. Yes, he's listed as doubtful, but that means there is a chance he could play tomorrow. So long term, that seems like a positive, and quite frankly, they should be able to beat this Washington Wizards team at home without Joel Embiid. Now, if they have him, that makes it a hell of a lot easier, but they should be able to even do it without him. To me, Josh, if you saw this news and you took it as negative, I can't help you, like, flat out. That's just where we are.
Well, the whole world wants to blame Ben Simmons' missed free throws on the loss last night, which, if anybody watched the game from beginning to end, knows that Ben Simmons missing free throws was not the reason why they lost, okay? But nonetheless, here we are. The Sixers did lose yesterday, and to me, I think a big issue, you mentioned, they're coming home tomorrow, Paul. Seth Curry hit no threes yesterday. I feel pretty comfortable saying that Seth Curry will not replicate that performance again in front of the home crowd because we know that this home crowd changes this team astronomically in the Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons era. During the regular season, they have an 81% winning percentage at home. Over 63% at home in the postseason. So, to me, the big issue isn't Joel Embiid, whether you play or not. The fact is, you're going home. And you know what? It's the NBA. Are you really surprised that a former league MVP and a guy who could have been the scoring champion won a game on the home court? I'm really not.
Right. You look at Monday's game was just a perfect storm of bad things. Embiid gets hurt in the first quarter, doesn't come back. Ben Simmons gets in foul trouble. Tobias Harris has by far his worst game of the series. As you already pointed out, Seth Curry hits no threes. They don't shoot as a team. They don't shoot the three ball particularly well. They only shoot 41% from the field as a team. It was just a perfect storm of bad things. And so, even if Joel Embiid is unable to play, as you already mentioned, they are historically excellent at home. They've been an excellent home team all throughout this season. In the playoffs, it's an unbelievable advantage. It's 100% capacity for the first time as well. That's a factor. And if they don't have Joel Embiid, at least they know going in they will not have him. They can make adjustments. They can do different things. They can maybe perhaps use Ben Simmons at the 5 a little more. I thought that was another thing, Josh, is I thought that if he wasn't in foul trouble, I really thought they would have used Ben Simmons more at the 5. The issue is he picks up that 4th foul, and you can't really use him in this situation as a screener and a roller because it's far too easy to pick up a cheap offensive foul, and then that would have hindered him even more. So, and I think you've seen in this series, Dwight Howard has struggled. There's no other way to put it. He has not been good in this series. And Mike Scott is Mike Scott. He's not had a good season, and he really did not impact the game at all yesterday. So to be able to go to Ben Simmons against a smaller team, mind you. The Wizards are a small team. We've seen that throughout. Now Bertans is out for the rest of the series, and that's one more taller player that's not going to be able to play for them. So they're going to be a very small team. So if there were ever an opportunity to use maybe like a 4-guard lineup or a 3-guard lineup with Tobias and Ben Simmons at the 5, I think this is a great opportunity to do that. And I think it's a lineup that helped them in Game 4 make that comeback in the fourth quarter, and it's a lineup that I think Doc Rivers can use in Game 5 if Joel Embiid doesn't play. So I just think you almost have to throw Game 4 away. A lot of weird things happened. It was a weird night. And so I think the Sixers will. I think they'll flush Game 4, what happened, and they'll go into Game 5 with a different mindset with that home crowd at their back.
Paul Hudrick, our Sixers insider over at 97.3 ESPN.com, joining us here on the Boardwalk Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. The latest edition of Coming In for a Landing podcast is now live on all your podcasting platforms. Paul, I want to ask you the question that's been asked by a lot of people today. I'm just going to leave it completely open-ended. Doc Rivers' answer to the Ben Simmons question, how do you interpret it from last night's postgame?
Expected. It's 100% what I expected him to do. You can agree or disagree with what Doc Rivers is saying. Here's the thing, John. I'm not even sure that Doc Rivers is being 100% honest, and I'm okay with that. This is a game, right? This is all a game. This media coach reporter thing, it's all a game. And Doc Rivers has been in it a very long time, and he knows how to play it. What good does it do him to come to the media and start saying bad things about Ben Simmons and start saying, yeah, Ben Simmons needs to hit these free throws. This is really bad. I sort of understand Doc Rivers' logic when he says, listen, a point per possession. In the postseason, that's not bad. You look at, with all due respect to Tobias Harris yesterday, who did not have a good game. He was not a point per possession player yesterday. So, in crunch time in the playoffs, being a point per possession, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. So I think he raises a fair argument there. But to go beyond that, Ben Simmons knows he needs to be better from the free throw line, flat out. He knows it. He said it himself. He knows he needs to get there and he needs to hit them. So what good does it do, Doc Rivers, to come at a guy who already is not feeling great about himself after the game, to then pile on to us in the media and make it even worse? Like I just, from a mental standpoint, from a logic standpoint, and listen, and I no scrutiny to my colleagues in the media. Questions need to be asked. I get it. None of the questions to me were out of line or unfair, and I just don't think that Doc Rivers' answers should be surprising. He has stuck up for Ben Simmons all season long, and to add to that, Josh, just the last thing I'll say on it is, we know Ben Simmons is working on it. He's trying. He works on his free throws. It's not a matter of effort or not practicing or not. It's just a matter of mentally, he's off right now. He's not in a rhythm, and he's just off. So I don't think there is something Doc Rivers can say to us that's magically going to snap Ben Simmons out of it. It's just going to happen. And it's not, Doc Rivers berating him isn't going to make it happen. If anything, him nurturing it and trying to give Ben confidence is what's going to turn it around.
How much also do you feel like, from Doc's perspective, is he's trying to answer the question without also, for lack of a better term, sounding ridiculous? Like, he understands that, like you said, it's a game back and forth. The media asks a question, the coach has to give an answer. How much also is Doc saying, listen, I have to give a answer, so I may not give you the answer you want, but I'm still giving you. It's like, the people talk about how, you can go to the media and do the Marshawn Lynch, I'm as here so I don't get fined, right? Well, Doc's at least giving you something to work with. As you said, it's not predictable. So how much of it is that, as well as Doc's saying, I have to give you something, so I just might not give you what you want to hear?
Yeah, and I don't say what you want about the responses. I think you would struggle to find an outlet that didn't write a story about Ben Simmons and that didn't use that Doc Rivers quote. So kind of the desired effect of wanting something that's quote worthy, that was attained by the people that asked the questions. He gave answers that were worth putting in stories and worth sharing on social media. So from that effect, from that way of looking at it, he supplied the reporters with exactly what we wanted. So and at the same time, I think it was twofold. I think he gave us an answer that he knew we would all use and that would get circulated. And it was an answer that when his all-star guards saw it, he would, again, fully know that his coach has his back. So I think, yes, I think Doc, in that sense, kind of used us. And I think he knows how to use us. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. He's been doing this a long time. So he knows that quote's going to get around. He knows that it's going to make its way. And not only does Ben Simmons sees that, but players around the league see that. And you better believe that if a free agent is thinking about where they might want to go and they see, wow, Doc Rivers really has Ben Simmons back. And that's cool that he appreciates what Ben Simmons brings to the table. That's going to, maybe sway a guy in a future thing. So like Doc Rivers 100% knows what he's doing. He's playing the game. He knows exactly what he's doing. And like I said, I think the biggest thing he wanted to convey is that he has Ben Simmons back. He appreciates what Ben Simmons does, even though Ben Simmons has his flaws. He's choosing to look more at the positive. And if we're looking at it just from a pure positive, negative standpoint, Josh, no one could deny Ben Simmons is a net positive for this basketball team. And I think that's the overarching point that Doc Rivers is trying to make.
Yeah, he literally was a +4 in the game last night. So literally and figuratively, he's a positive on the court. Paul Hudrick joining us here, our Sixers insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. In your observations, I'm so glad you wrote this one part. Can we talk about Tyrese Maxey? I mean, we talk so much negativity. Oh, Ben Simmons, Embiid, blah, blah, blah. How about the guy is a rookie? He's your number 2 scorer in the game last night, and he brought a level of energy that this team so desperately needed off the bench. Between him and Thibault hitting 2 threes himself, by the way, they really gave you a legitimate pick-me-up when they were in the game.
Yeah, Furkan Korkmaz too. I mean, you got to give him credit. It's been kind of a weird series for him. He hasn't really gotten consistent time at all. Doc put him in game 1 when they really needed someone to hit some shots, and he missed all 3 he took. And then Doc's kind of gone away from him since then, playing him really sparingly. But he gave him a little boost in the second half, along with Tyrese Maxey. I thought both of those guys had a little energy and gave them a little something. But yeah, with Maxey, we're at a point now, and like when to get back to the point about like Ben Simmons playing the 5, part of the reason I want to see that is because Maxey has been arguably one of their top 7 or 8 best players. So I want to see him out there. It's regardless of lineup, figure out a way to get him out there. And one of the ways you can do that is by playing Ben Simmons at the 5 and going small. And I don't, especially in this series, Josh, when you look at what the Wizards are good, they're probably going to have to start either Raul Neto or Ish Smith tomorrow, along with Beal and Westbrook. I mean, they're going to have, the only guys in their starting line, they're going to have Achimura at 6'8", and they're going to have probably Gafford again, I would assume, at around 6'10". And then everybody else is 6'3" or smaller. So when you look at the lineup from that perspective, you can get away with playing Ben at the 5 and giving Maxey more time. And that's 100%. If I'm Doc Rivers, that's the way I'd be looking at it. And George Hill, too. George Hill's been a plus through 4 games so far. I think he had 14 points last night. So, I mean, those 2 guys, I think, they're impacting the game and impacting winning more than Dwight Howard or Mike Scott are right now. And maybe that doesn't happen in the next series. But in this series, that is the case. And that's why, for me, Tyrese Maxey, I'm finding a way to get him on the floor because he has been that good and he's been that consistently good. And really, he's carried it over from the way he closed the regular season. And he is just showing this moment is not too big for him. He has not flinched at all.
So with that being said, let's look ahead to Game 5 at home, 20,000 people in the building. What do you expect Doc Rivers to do in Game 5 that is going to be an adjustment? Because let's assume, let's live in a world where Joel Embiid is doubtful and he doesn't play. What does that mean for the Sixers in Game 5?
So if it were me, and I'm not Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers kind of goes by gut feel and just does what he feels is right, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. for me, in the starting lineup, if Joel Embiid does not play, I start Tyrese Maxey. I really would. I would put Ben Simmons at the 5, and I would start Tyrese Maxey. As you mentioned, you got 20,000 fans. They're going to be going nuts. I don't know if it comes across on TV, Josh, but every time that Tyrese Maxey checks into a game, the crowd loses their minds. Yeah. They love him. So you announce him as part of the starters.
Hold on, do you announce him last? Do you announce him last?
Maybe you do, and it brings and you just you give the crowd that extra boost, and then on top of that, the energy he brings. You have a chance if you're the Sixers at home. You can just take the Wizards' heart. You can do that, and I think that lineup gives you the best chance to do it. I think Ben Simmons will be okay against Gafford. I think he can stand up pretty well against the lob threat. You're going to lose something in the rim protection department, but quite frankly, Dwight Howard and Mike Scott haven't provided that either. So I'd rather go with the small lineup, try to run the Wizards, try to almost beat the Wizards with their own game in a sense, but you're a better defensive team. So I think you have a better shot at running them out of the building than they do you. So I think in this situation, I'm not saying that this should be the case going forward or whatever, and I don't know what the second round's going to hold because every series is different. Really, every game is different. But for me, I start Tyrese Maxey. I just think that's the lineup that gives you the better chance to win. If not Maxey, I would start George Hill. If you're looking for a guy with maybe a little bit more experience, gives you a little bit more outside shooting. But I would not start Dwight Howard or Mike Scott. I think that's a mistake. Now, I think he's going to start Mike Scott. Just a hunch, just what I think. But if it were me, I would start Tyrese Maxey.
Paul, one more before I let you go. Always appreciate you jumping on here at Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. At Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Check out his latest article at 97.3 ESPN.com after last night's game. Paul, we all expect it's going to be Nets and Bucks. I mean, they're not even playing Kemba Walker tonight for the Celtics. It's almost a fait accompli that it's going to be Nets Bucks. How do you feel about that series after what we know now? Because in my opinion, I think the Celtics' one win showed a recipe to the Bucks of how to slow down the Nets, which was their 3 stars scored 96 points combined, and they lost. And most teams, if you tell me your best 3 players get 96 points, you're probably winning. And I think that gave you a little perspective of there's a way to beat this Nets team, and I think the Bucks may be best equipped to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they have a chance. They really do have a shot. I think the Nets are scary. Don't get me wrong. That talent level, and when you see those 3 guys are all clicking, they're really, really going to be hard to beat. But what the Bucks have is they have 3 above-average defenders in their starting lineup. Giannis offers a really unique matchup for Kevin Durant, and I would assume that he might be guarding Kevin Durant on the other end. I don't know. Maybe it's Blake Griffin. I don't know. And then you have Drew Holiday can guard Kyrie, and Middleton can guard Harden at a pretty high level. So they offer a really intriguing matchup. I would lean towards the Nets still, just because of that talent. But the Bucks have a shot, and I think the Bucks are a better team than they were last year. I think they've already proven that by the way they took care of the Heat, and they're a little angry, and I think that bodes well. When you're a team that has that chip on your shoulder, and we've seen this throughout, and it's not just, sure, it's NBA history. We saw it with Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, where you lose playoff matchups and it makes you better and it makes you come out the next year hungrier and wanting it more. We see it in all sports. Think about even the Phillies back in the day, they lose in 2007 in the first round, they lose to the Rockies. Then they come back, angrier the next year, they win the whole thing. So I think there is a precedent for that in sports where teams come close and they lose, and it fuels them. And I think the Bucks have that going for them too. So I think it's going to be a knockout, drag-out series. I think it's going to be tough, and I think it's going to be ugly. And I think the Nets are the Nets up for that. Can they do that? Can they grind it out like that? Clearly, they have the offensive firepower to compete with anyone, but will they be able to kind of win those uglier games? And that's what I think the series is going to be awesome. I think I could easily see it going 7 games. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
If you asked me right now, Paul, I'm going with the Bucks for this one reason. Giannis, in his post-game press conference after being the Heat, he literally came this close saying, I don't bleep and care about any of your questions. He's like, the past is the past. We're moving. He's at a point right now where I think mentally He's just on a different level. And if anybody should be scared of that, because this dude's 26 years old, he's technically just entering the prime of his career, and he's won 2 MVPs. If I'm the Nets, I should be scared because you know what? Durant's got a ring, Kyrie's got a ring, Harden's got an MVP. Giannis, he's a little too hungry. If I was the Nets, I'd be looking at the Nets like, that guy's kind of psychopath right now.
Drew Holiday is also pretty darn hungry. You know, here's a guy that's kind of always been really under the radar, pretty underrated player. Spent some tough years in New Orleans. Now he's got a real chance of winning something. You better believe he's going to bring it all too. I mean, and I agree with you on Giannis, man. His mindset is different. I thought the line that we didn't want to play with our food, he said after Game 4. I mean, this guy, he's got a little bit of that edge to him right now, and I think that it's been needed from him. And I don't think he's always had it. And I think, it's an excellent point that he is hungrier than he's ever been, and that's going to mean trouble for the Nets. They're going to have their hands full with him.
He's Paul Hudrick. The latest edition of Coming In for a Landing podcast dropped today. Him and Kevin McCormick unpacking Game 4, and of course, look ahead to Game 5. At Paul Hudrick on Twitter, and as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Paul, appreciate you jumping on today and the conversation. Great stuff.
Thanks, Josh. Anytime, man.